blood pressure is being regulated by the kidney and how that kind of connects together, like all of those stuff. So if what happens when you have low blood pressure versus like high blood pressure. So let's focus on like, okay, what happens when you have low blood pressure, like low MAP? Then you're gonna have a low glomerular filtration rate. Is that okay?
It's because the hydrostatic pressure will be lower.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens when you have a low GFR? So when you have a low GFR, that would be detected by certain cells, right? So which cells detect that? It was the macula densa that was in the ascending loop of Henle, which are detecting that.
That sense it. Yes,
yeah, that are able to sense like low fluid, oh, there's low salt, that means there's low osmolarity. And I can also just upload this, it's fine, I don't mind. Okay, so if you have low osmolarity, that would send, like, think of it like lower signals, because it's like high osmolarity, they send more signals to granular cells, which are beside the afferent arteriole. Are you okay with what's afferent and efferent arteriole?
Yes, afferent's coming in, efferent's going out.
Yeah.
Efferent is smaller.
Yeah, like usually efferent is smaller just because they want to build up the high pressure inside the glomerulus, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, so you have lower signals coming into the granular cells just because they're detecting low osmolarity.
So is it detecting osmolarity or pressure?
It's detecting osmolarity.
Yeah. So it's not detecting low blood pressure?
No, but it's correlated. Because of the low pressure, you're having less amount of fluid. And because of the less amount of fluid and less salt, it's just detecting less low osmolarity. Okay, and if the granular cells get the signal, like gets low signal from the macula densa cells, then they would do three things mainly. Okay, one, they would want to relax this afferent arteriole, like smooth muscles that are around the afferent arteriole. Remember that arterioles have smooth muscles around it that could be regulated. So they would relax it, which means the afferent vessel would dilate.
Is that okay? It's the vessel that dilates, not the blood vessels.
This is a blood vessel. The afferent arteriole is a blood vessel. Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah, okay. These are all blood. Like here, this is all
right,
blood.
You mean like it's not the.
Yeah, like this is gonna dilate the afferent. Okay, so if this dilates, just think of it like more blood would be able to come into the glomerulus now. Yes, and that would increase GFR, which is like one of their goals because they want to increase GFR, right? And this is called the tubuloglomerular feedback. Okay, cool. So that's one. The next thing that just happens normally, that's the myogenic response, is because there is lower blood coming in, like there's lower pressure, they would like relax and dilate the afferent one. That's just the myogenic response. Less blood coming in, less pressure, so they would respond by like relaxing. They wouldn't want to contract and like give that elastic thing that you learned about in the blood vessels, probably, or no?
So you're saying because there is just less volume of blood.
Yeah, there's less
the
pressure.
arteries aren't going to be storing as much pressure.
Yeah, so if you push less force in here, they would push less back.
Right.
Think of it that way. Yeah.
Okay. Is that like a formal response? I don't know.
Yeah, like it's called a myogenic response. It's because of the stretch of the muscles. Talk about that. It's okay. Not super important, but that would also increase GFR. Okay. And the third thing, which is like the important thing, is this granular cells can release renin. And that's something probably you studied about in intro bio, right? Right. Okay. So renin actually is released due to three signals. Like three signals can like cause it to be released. One of them is the one we're talking about, which is like the signal from macula densa, like less signal from macula densa making granular cells release renin. That's one thing that could happen. Second, you could actually get direct detection from the efferent vessels, like to directly release renin. So it doesn't have to come from the macula densa at all. It just they can themselves do it if they detect less pressure. Okay. And the third is by sympathetic nervous system. So if you trigger sympathetic nervous system, the one that we talked about before, it also causes renin to be released from the kidneys.
So it could be released due to any one of these.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's released, that's important. If it's released, it goes into the blood, blah, 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 and it helps convert angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. I drew like just a triangle, but this is like a liver. So angiotensinogen is produced by the liver. So it helps convert angiotensinogen, which is like inactive, to an active form, which is angiotensin 1 or Ang1. Is that okay?
So it's released and sent to the liver.
No, angiotensinogen is released from the liver.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and renin helps convert the angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1.
Where is this happening? In granular cells?
Oh, this is happening in the blood.
Right, but near.
I would say it's probably happening everywhere in the blood because this is gonna go everywhere. Yeah. So, like for example, ACE enzyme, like angiotensin converting enzyme, is produced mainly from the lungs, but it's released from everywhere, but mainly from the lungs. Bad drawing. And this angiotensin converting enzyme or ACE would convert Ang1 to Ang2, which is important. Like they do a lot of things.
So it needs to like be really accessible for all this stuff.
Yeah. So then angiotensin 2 is going to do a lot of things, and that's important. So what do? They would constrict the efferent, which is here. Right. So they would constrict that.
Why would you want to constrict it?
Think about it.
You want flow to be easier.
No, you want flow to be, there should be more pressure here. If you constrict here, then fluid is going to be backed up. Blood is going to be backed up here. And that would cause more filtration.
Oh, higher pressure. Okay.
And GFR to be increased, which is what you want. So that's your goal. So that's fulfilling your goal of increased GFR. Next, you have, it also does is it increases sodium reabsorption in the proximal convoluted tubule. Now, if you remember, if you reabsorb more sodium, water would follow, your blood volume would increase.
So it's anti-reabsorption in the proximal tubule. So is it going into or out?
Into the blood.
So it's reabsorbing into the blood.
Yeah, whenever we say reabsorb, we always mean into the blood. If we meant like going into the tubules, we would say secreted. That's the term we use.
Right, but it's all in perspective blood.
Yeah, so reabsorb means going into the blood. Yep. Cool. And so that's how blood volume would increase. And if blood volume increases, MAP increases, which was also one of your goals, right? Okay, the other thing Eng2 does is something you probably learned in about 2 as well, is they help release aldosterone from the adrenal cortex. Yeah. And what aldosterone does is they put in more, I wouldn't say collecting duct, because Marianne Price, like, she doesn't, she does distal. Again, it differs from like different professors. I don't know what Professor Brent says.
We'll call it.
Distal or again, it really depends on like different professors. But yeah, we could do distal.
The collecting duct, no, distal tubule. Yeah.
Distal, yeah, distal it is then. So aldosterone would introduce more ENaC channels. So ENaC channels are channels that would help reabsorb more sodium. So they would help put in more ENaC channels onto the distal tubule so that more sodium is reabsorbed. If sodium is reabsorbed, water is reabsorbed, which increases blood volume, which increases MAP.
So both aldosterone and angiotensin increase reabsorption of NA.
Yeah.
Just in different locations.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
And if you mention aldosterone and ENaC channels, you get another point. So it's like mentioning the like, yeah.
ENaC channels.
And yeah, aldosterone.
What are ENaC?
Something sodium something channels.
What do they do?
They just help move sodium into the blood, like from the tubules. So it's like just the channel for sodium to go, but it's like a special channel. Oops. Why? Okay. Is that okay? Till now.
Yes.
Yes, a lot of information. But yeah. So basically our goals was to increase GFR and increase sodium reabsorption so that we can increase blood volume and MAP. And we have kind of like met those goals, okay, through these processes. So we dilated the afferent by the tubuloglomerular feedback at the very start here to increase GFR. And then we also, by angiotensin 2, constricted our efferent, which also increased our GFR. Right. Okay, cool. There are other factors which also helps. So if you remember from previous, like if your blood pressure falls, what happens? If sympathetic response increases to increase cardiac output, TPR, right? Yeah, and sympathetic response is also responsible for releasing renin and doing this whole thing. So yeah, they also help with that. And this one probably not that important. I'm gonna skip it. Okay. Now let's talk about what would happen when blood pressure is increased, which means GFR would be increased, just the opposite. Okay. All right. So if you have that, if you have too much blood volume, too much blood pressure, you're gonna have more fluid in the macula densa, like detected by the macula densa. Yeah. Which means more signals gonna go to the granular cells.
What does, I guess, the immaculate that's release onto granules?
Oh, they don't release anything. They have a, oh, actually
It's paired
they
with
paracrine, yeah.
but what or doesn't matter.
Oh, what type of paracrine? I don't think so. I think it matters. Paracrine, just knowing that because it's a short distance, they're like so close together in like anatomically, it's just easier to release like local messengers like paracrines. Okay, so because of that, the granular cells are going to make the afferent arteriole constrict. That's the tubuloglomerular feedback.
The afferent, right?
Yeah. Okay. Because of the high pressure, you're gonna have the myogenic response of like squeezing more. So that also makes the afferent constrict. Is that okay? And the third thing, again, just the opposite, because there's less signal, there's going to be less release of renin. And all the things we talked about in terms of how renin leads to production of Ang2 and aldosterone. So all those things are going to be less. So there will be less reabsorption of sodium, reduced MAP, which is one of your goals. Yeah. Mhm. And if you recall, Ang2 was responsible for efferent arterial constriction. So if you have less Ang2, you're gonna get less constriction, just so it's gonna be dilated, which is great because that means the pressure in the glomerulus would decrease, GFR would decrease. Right. So that basically follows like our goals of like reducing MAP, reducing GFR. So we can achieve those. Okay. And just flipping the sympathetic activity side, if your blood pressure is increased, that means sympathetic activity would be decreased, decreased TPR, decreased cardiac output, decreased MAP.
There's no like sympathetic, parasympathetic.
Not really. Parasympathetic does have response in heart rate, remember, just
Right,
reducing
not
it.
here.
Yeah, not here. Because sympathetic is the one that helps release renin. So we're just not gonna talk about it. But it has some effects in like reducing heart rate, but just like not as much that we're gonna talk about it here.
Also, angiotensin two
Mhm.
helps release of aldosterone, or
Yeah.
so you need angiotensin two to make aldosterone.
Um, yes, I would say yes, to help it release it from the adrenal cortex.
Okay, because they're not the same compound,
No,
but
no.
you're saying that one
They help with
does
like
help
release
the
it.
release of the other.
Yes, because I think angiotensin is like a peptide, whereas aldosterone is steroid. So they're definitely not the same, and also not even produced by the same cells or anything.
Aldosterone is the adrenal
Cortex. What is released by the medulla?
Those are your neuro like transmitter kind of things, like epinephrine,
Epinephrine.
rather than hormones.
Yeah. Perfect. One added thing, I don't know if she talked about, I think she will, is if you have if you have high blood pressure, you also release this peptide called atrial natriuretic peptide. Um, atrial natriuretic peptide, it's produced like mainly from the atria, or that's where they detected it first from. So that's why they just named it atrial. Yeah. So this particular peptide helps with reducing sodium reabsorption in the collecting duct. I mean, I guess for you guys it would be distal.
So it
Hmm.
it decreases your absorption.
Yeah, so if you reabsorb less sodium, less water would be reabsorbed, more would be expelled, your blood volume would decrease, which is what you want to do. Yeah. So yeah, so that's like an added extra thing just in the case of increased MAP. Okay, I don't know if you saw it. It's ANP, like that's short, atrial natriuretic peptide. That's shortened it to ANP.
Where does it come from?
It mainly, I mean, it says that it comes from atria, but I think it's like mainly produced by the atria, and or they first detected it from the atria. That's why they named it atrial natriuretic peptide.
I was gonna say this is for like the heart.
Yeah, atria, heart, yeah. Okay. Is this fine till now?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Anything in details that you want to talk about? Because this was like an overview of stuff.
I got to the reabsorption stuff today.